The Kaufman Corner podcast is off and running here with our final edition, Randy. Our final edition before the season begins. We'll be talking about real games that count when next we come to you with the Kaufman Corner podcast. With you, as always, the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, one of the founders of Baseball Prospectus. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Mark Canha has been added to the Kansas City Royals. What does he bring to the table? Whose playing time is he taking? How will they use him? The Royals outrighting Carlos Hernandez, gone. He gets picked up by the Phillies. Is that a failure? I don't know. I don't know what to make of that. We'll talk about that some more. Vinnie Pasquantino pulls a hamstring. He says it's no big deal, is it? We'll project the Royals' final 26-man roster. We'll take a look at the schedule and what's coming up as far as how the Royals will get the season started. And, of course, our world-famous Bold and Daring predictions. They're coming at you right now here on the Kaufman Corner podcast.
You're listening to the Kaufman Corner podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Royals, breaking down the Royals like no one else can. Kaufman Corner is hosted by Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro. Rany is a co-founder of Baseball Prospectus, author of Rany on the Royals, and a former columnist for Grantland, The Ringer, and The Athletic. Soren is the award-winning afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Kaufman Corner is proudly brought to you by David Starnes Allstate Insurance, covering all the important things in your world. Home, business, life, and even the fun stuff as well. Motorcycle, boat, ATV, you name it, get with Dave and he'll have you covered. Give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Visit them online or stop into any of their locations, including North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave today. He'll give you peace of mind for the things in your life most important to you. And now, here are your hosts, Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro.
All right, thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it. Like we said, the final edition here of the Kaufman Corner before we get real Royals baseball to talk about, Randy, and we have no shortage of topics. We're going to try to cram this into where we don't go 5 hours. But, we each can talk a little, right?
Just a little bit.
We each can talk a little bit. So we have that going for us. Just keep that in mind, people. Listen, Mark Canha. This was the big move that you'd been waiting for, Randy. I know you've been beating on the desk. More Mark Canha. It's like cowbell when it comes to, Will Ferrell. Mark Canha is what you've been asking for. And you got it, buddy. What do you think?
So it's time to recreate the a scene from Moneyball, Soren. So I'm going to be Brad Pitt, and you can be Jonah Hill.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. So actually, I'm going to start by being the scout questioning the signing of Mark Canha. Billy Bean, Mark Canha's 36 years old. He doesn't hit for power anymore. He can't play defense. Why are we picking this guy up? Now I'm Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
And I point to you. What does he do?
You want me to answer? And your line is supposed to be, when I point to you, that's when you talk.
When I point to you, that's when you talk. What does he do?
He gets on base.
Ding. All right. There's your answer, right? Mark
you got to snap your fingers. Come on, I know that scene by heart.
I just watched the clip to make sure he just does this like energetic like finger push.
But then he goes, that's right.
No, there were like 3 different times he turns to him in that scene. So
yes.
Mark Canha's OBP last year was 344, which would have been, I think, second best on the Kansas City Royals behind the one and only Bobby Witt. It was also his lowest OBP in, I want to say, 6 years. Like if you look at his OBPs the last 6 seasons, I'll read them off real quickly for you. Going back to 2019, 396, 387, 358, 367, 355, 344. Now, on the one hand, you could say the trend is not great, right? It's a pretty consistent decline. And he is 36 years old. But he gets on base. Like it's hard, and he was a non-roster, signing by the Brewers. The Royals acquired for a player to be named later or cash, which is either way probably not going to be something we're going to talk about in the future in terms of what we give up to get him. I believe he's guaranteed $1.4 million when they add him to the roster, which they will very shortly. For what it costs to get him, this is a smart signing, and it's a good sign that the Royals are in kind of not just in a win now mode, but are kind of like making sure that they have everything they need on the bench as well as in the lineup to compete in every game. They've got a guy now off the bench who can hit lefties. He may start against lefties occasionally, but he can get on base even against right-handers. You need a guy to start a rally, not just finish a rally. He's a good guy to have around. He's a professional at bat. He's a veteran. He understands his role. He's probably not getting, he's gotten 450 plate appearances or more the last 4 years. He's probably not going to get to 300 this year. I think he understands this. This is maybe his last chance at a meaningful major league season. And he seems comfortable with that. So to me, it's a no-brainer. It was a good move. And I feel just a little bit more comfortable. The Royals are going into the season having covered all their bases to be as competitive as possible.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this is a chance to make the roster a little bit better. And this is what you do when you're a competitive club. You see an opportunity to make your club better, and you take it. And the cost is minimal. And, this is one of those, they're not where the Kansas City Chiefs are or where the New England Patriots were, but there were times it's like these guys that are just exactly kind of the role player that those championship teams need. And there are bad teams that are letting guys like that go. And for whatever reason, because they're not part of the future, they're not the answer every single day. So they're like, well, we got to move on to a young guy. And you just give championship clubs the kind of guy that they need. I don't know. I'm not ready to call the Royals a championship club. They're a playoff club. And this is exactly the kind of guy that they were looking for. Is it everything they wanted? No, they'd like a guy who could hit 25 home runs, right? I think they'd like that as well, which he did earlier in his career and had a 500 slug for once in his career, but had about a 350 slug last year. So, but this is better than what they had. I'll ask you, who loses out because Mark Canha's on the team?
So the other interesting thing about acquiring him, this might sound strange, but it actually tells me something about Maikel Garcia of all people. The bringing in Canha makes me think that they are comfortable with Maikel Garcia playing center field because, this seems to, take away. It's probably Joey Wiemer who might have lost out the most in this move. And I like Joey Wiemer, and I think he's got a potentially a bright future. But if they don't feel like he's ready for a limited role and they want him to play every day, then he's maybe better off going to Omaha playing every day and seeing if he can develop into an everyday outfielder, not just a platoon guy. But you can't have Kyle Isbell by himself in center field. So if they think Maikel Garcia can play center against lefties, that opens up a roster spot for a guy like Canha. Because
I agree with you, by the way. I think Weimer's the guy
right
that's going to lose the most because I think they see him as a true throw-in.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of other people are like, this guy's part of the, he's a piece of the puzzle. I don't know that they ever saw him as a piece of the puzzle. I think he was a throw-in, and I think they got their answer off where they think he's at now. Not to say that he'll be discarded, and but they'll continue to work with him and hope that he can play a role and maybe get more at bats down in the minor leagues. But I think that's the guy that's is on the outs.
Well, I mean, I think he was a good flyer, and he's had a decent spring. I don't think that this necessarily tells me that the Royals have made up their minds and they don't think he's ever got a future. I think that more depth is always better. Like they've added some talent. Wiemer has an option. Like Wiemer can go to the minor leagues, and this is the time of year where if guys can go to the minor leagues and somebody else can't, you're probably inclined to stick with the guy who can't, so that you can maintain inventory. But it tells us a lot about the bench because at this point, 3/4 of the bench, there's really only one bench spot available because we know Freddie Fermin's making the team. Canha's obviously making the team. Dairon Blanco seems to, have had a spot locked up since before spring training began. I will say Blanco is still recovering from, I think, a sore Achilles. He's not 100%, guaranteed to make the roster on opening day. And there have been some interesting rumors that if he's not ready to go, do you know who might take that spot? Is Tyler Tolbert, who does the one thing that Dairon Blanco is most famous for, being a great pinch runner, right? The thing about Dairon Blanco, he can also hit a little bit, especially against lefties. Tyler Tolbert, excuse me, cannot really hit. I think last year, I mean, he finally made it to AAA last year and he had 141 in 27 games. Like, he's not proven. He's 27 years old. I don't think he's ever going to hit at the major league level. But we are talking Terrence Gore caliber base running prowess. 241 stolen bases and 16 caught stealings in his minor league career. I mean, we're talking about a success rate of like 93%. He, to the best of my knowledge, is the only player in professional baseball history to go 60 for 60 in stolen base attempts in a season. In 2022, he was 60-0. So if Dairon Blanco is out for a week or two or three and they want to have Tyler Tolbert just to pinch run, fantastic. I have no problems with that. That leaves one roster spot available for somebody who really needs to be able to play infield as well as outfield. And I think we both think Cavan Biggio has the inside edge on that, but it's not 100% guarantee. Harold Castro might end up getting it. Nick Lofton is still in the mix. Like, they have options, which
it's Cavan Biggio. Come on.
I think it is. I'm just saying they have options. So, like, if somebody else, we're already talking. We'll be talking about Vinnie Pasquantino's strained hammy here. But like, if somebody else is not ready to go on opening day, they have a couple of guys who can fill in for a few weeks, and it's not a disaster.
No, they have a guy who can play first base. They have a guy who can get on base, and so hopefully that with Vinnie Pasquantino down, it will not be the epic fail for the offense that it was when he went down at the end of last year.
Oh, exactly.
I think we definitely feel like they're more equipped to handle him being out for some time, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Knock on wood that he's not going to be out for long. If at all, he's poo-pooing it like it's no big deal. So that's great. I hope that's the deal. But if he is, do we agree that they're much more likely to be able to salvage some offense without him than they were at the end of the year last year where they really struggled?
Yeah, I mean, Cavan Biggio himself, right? We were talking about him as kind of the utility, more in the sense he could play infield and outfield, but he's played a fair amount of first base. And certainly just from an on-base perspective, like, is he any worse than Yuli Gurriel, who, was last seen batting fifth on a playoff team last year? I mean, Cavan Biggio, career 341 on base, 379 slug, obviously not nearly that good last year. But, as recently as 2023, he had a 340 OBP and a 370 slug. Yuli Gurriel spent the entire season last year in AAA until the Royals essentially bought him and stuffed him into their lineup on September 1st. So, like, and Cavan Biggio is just one of multiple options. If Vinny is unable to start the season on the roster, Cavan Biggio, we assume, will make the team. I wonder if that opens up a spot for like Nick Lofton then, and then maybe you have a little bit of a platoon with those guys, because Nick Lofton is right-handed, Cavan Biggio is left-handed. For 2 weeks, could you get by with that at first base? Sure, why not?
Yeah, for sure. I do like Terry's like they convert a lot of people. Why is it so difficult to find outfielders? Part of that is if a guy can play in the dirt, that's a more covet. Like, you make your way away from the action, right? So, true great center fielder, yes, they're placed there, but you end up in right or left. Nobody played right or left in Little League. That plays in the big leagues. That's just not the way it works. So, part of it is they're trying them at the positions that are more valuable defensively, in an effort to let them fail their first. My frustration, I think it's a good question, Terry. My frustration is, like, what takes him so long to figure out this guy can't do it? Like, he can't play in the dirt. Let's get him out to the outfield. Get him out. Figure that out faster. Like, it seems like they need 1,000 minor league at bats or 300-400 games of a minor leaguer's career to figure out that, okay, we need to try him here. Like, get that figured out quicker. Right. That's my frustration on that one. But yeah, I think we're all on board. Canha's a good addition. He gives them flexibility with first in the outfield. And I think the Royals are better equipped. They need Vinnie Pasquantino, but they're better equipped to handle that part of the equation. We'll get to the injury part of Vinnie and how concerned we are on that. I want to talk about the moves, outrighting Carlos Hernandez, Nick Prado, and Nelson Velasquez. And Carlos Hernandez, who throws close to 100 miles per hour, of course, got picked up. It's the Phillies, which is a little intriguing. I would have thought, White Sox, bottom feeders, we got to take a shot at a live arm, something the Royals would do all the time. So that is interesting, but it's also interesting that it means that he cleared waivers all the way down to the Phillies, right?
Exactly.
So it means that a lot of people went, yeah, I'll pass. Like, not messing with this guy. What's your reaction to the end of Carlos Hernandez era here in Kansas City?
So, I mean, first off, like the fact that the Royals took a look at him, like you said, throwing upper 90s, and with a spotty track record of success. Like he certainly had stretches, not just games, but stretches where he was a very effective reliever for the Royals over the last 2 years, and said, this guy is not good enough to make our opening, or our 13-man pitching staff. It's certainly a good sign in the sense of you've got to earn your job. The fact that he was out of options, I thought would protect him coming into the spring training, and ultimately it didn't. And I don't think he necessarily looked worse than he has in the past. I just think he was just erratic.
He is what he is.
Right, exactly. I don't think he pitched his way out of a job. I just think that he had to earn a job, and he didn't. And from that perspective, I think it's a good sign that the team feels very confident in the depth that they have on their pitching staff, with one major caveat, which is, like, when we predicted our 26-man opening day rosters 6 weeks ago before spring training began, the 13 pitchers, I'm pretty sure I got 12 of the 13 right, because Andy Rogers has put out what we believe to be the Royals, opening day 13-man pitching staff. And if Andy's reporting it, it's coming from the Royals. Like, we can be pretty confident in that. And I want to say the Royals have made like some really common sense, but still very encouraging decisions, like Chris Bubich in the rotation and Daniel Lynch in the bullpen. It seems like a no-brainer, but there was no guarantee that's how things would end up when spring training began. They made that decision. Daniel Lynch has had a pretty good spring training. I mean, quietly, he's walked nobody and struck out 16. I don't look at a lot of spring training stats, but strikeout to walk ratio was always a useful thing. Daniel Lynch did not pitch his way into the bullpen. The Royals understood that Chris Bubich's upside, and Chris certainly pitched well too, but his upside is such that they want him in the rotation. He's going to be in the rotation. They're not worried about necessarily him, overdoing it in terms of the innings bump. I'm still getting used. We talked about this before. I think you and I are still getting used to the Royals just making decisions that you and I understand almost all the time. Like the true head scratching decisions have become a rarity. So that was a decision they made tons of sense to me. The bullpen, the 8 guys that are starting in the bullpen, we've got the Carlos Estevez, Lucas Erceg, Hunter Harvey, that kind of 3-man at the top of the bullpen, or the back of the bullpen, I guess you could call it. Then you have the lefties. You have Daniel Lynch. You have Angel Serpa. You have Sam Long. Sure, all of those guys have earned it. You have John Schreiber, who's kind of the specialist in the sense of a kind of a sidearm right-hander. It's the 8th guy that I'm still questioning, and that's Chris Stratton. Because Chris Stratton does not, based on performance last year, does not deserve to be on the roster, but he has a guaranteed contract for, I believe, $4.5 million this year. And I just worry a little bit that, did they make the decision to go with Chris Stratton over Carlos Hernandez, at least in part because Chris Stratton is guaranteed money? And if they did, I disagree with that, simply because it's a sunk cost. Stratton, even if Stratton is good, he's a free agent at the end of the year. Whereas if Carlos Hernandez figures it out and is good, you've got him for two more years of club control after this. Like, there were reasons why I thought Carlos Hernandez would win that spot over Chris Stratton, but that's literally the only decision the Royals have made that I did not expect before the season began. So that's the one to watch. Will Chris Stratton actually bounce back and be a useful reliever for the Royals this year? If so, then this makes a lot of sense. If not, they may regret, like, we may look at what Carlos Hernandez does in Philly and be like, the Royals could have had that if they just hadn't been committed to a sunk cost already.
If they told Carlos Hernandez, you're fighting for a job, you need to treat the spring training like that, then he failed. Right. And I think there's at some point where, I think there are a lot of guys in baseball that have like prospect disease, where they're eternally like advanced because they have the tools and they never act like, I think the obvious one is Mondesi. who never really earned his promotion, but kept getting promoted and had all these tools. And, and they're forever just like, well, they're oftentimes, I think, the guys that are hurt all the time because, well, I'm the guy. So, I mean, I'm not feeling it today. I don't need to play. I'll still get advanced because I'm the guy. And Carlos Hernandez kind of felt like that. And if this was listen, kid, you got to make the club. And it was a competition between him and Stratton, he lost. I'm with you. I don't disagree with anything you said. But at some point, he's horribly frustrating, right? Because all the tools are there. Why can't he's seemingly not hurt and still doesn't pitch well? Why? And I think he's the guy that you want to be the third team on, as I like to say. You want him to get released by one team. Second team, he's going to be like, well, those guys are jackasses. They just don't understand me. And I know what I'm doing. Second team, go fail there. And then it's like, wow, my career is on the line. I've got to figure this thing out. So I'd love to be the third team around on him, but I'd seen enough of Carlos Hernandez, right? Like I agree 100% with everything, but what are the odds that they're going to regret letting go of Carlos Hernandez in your mind? Truly. I think you made a great case why you would keep him. Now they didn't. How likely is it to blow up in their face?
Not likely. Like what you said, the third team, like I could absolutely see a scenario where the Phillies, they bail on, because they're a contender. They bail on him in 6 weeks or 8 weeks. He moves on to another team, finally goes to the minor leagues, and then emerges next year, right? That absolutely could happen. We see relievers all the time. Remember the Royals, when the Royals, briefly the Royals had, oh gosh, what's his name? The Australian kid who turned into one of the best closers in the game here. It'll come to me.
They had Jose Bautista briefly.
Well, Jose Bautista, no. Well, they had Yoel Payamps would be a good example of a reliever they had who was decent in Kansas City, then left. I think the Brewers turn everybody into a good reliever. Like if he had landed up in Milwaukee, I'd be worried, But there's Hendricks. Thank you, Cop Man. Liam Hendricks was a Royal way back in like 2014. One of the pennant winning years. I think they used him as a starter. He went to like 2 or 3 more teams where he finally found a role and turned into a dominant reliever. But especially with relievers, if a reliever doesn't pass through your organization on his way to becoming a dominant reliever somewhere down the road, you're probably not shuffling through enough relievers. You know what I mean? Like, some turnover is necessary, and just by definition, sometimes a guy's going to slip through your fingers and not figure it out on that stop. He needs another stop or two to figure it out. I could definitely see that with Carlos Hernandez. I think the point you are making, I can't emphasize this enough about the difference between Alberto Mondesi and Carlos Hernandez. This is not Dayton Moore's team anymore. Like, this is the mistake I made. I thought JJ Piccolo was going to be on some level an extension of the Dayton Moore's administration. It is not. And I don't think it manifests anywhere as clearly as it does on this particular issue.
Yeah.
Right. If Dayton Moore was still around, I think someone like Carlos Hernandez, you wouldn't let him go. You'd be too worried that he's going to figure things out after cutting him. JJ's not afraid. And look, sometimes it backfires. I mean, how much better would this team be if, our right fielder right now, instead of being Hunter Renfroe, was Brent Rooker, right? Yeah. Or even a DH, right? But at the same time, they got Brent Rooker for Cam Gallagher, backup catcher, 2 months worth or whatever of Cam Gallagher. That would have been in conjunction with the Cole Reagans trade. That would have been one of the all-time great trade deadlines in Major League history if they had held on to Rooker. It sucks and it hurts, but the point is, you make enough transactions, sometimes you're gonna miss on one, but at least you're trying.
You got to count on you're going to get 3 out of 5 right.
And
yes. Or 4 out of 5. Put whatever number is. The bottom line is you can't panic when you get one wrong. You have to have the confidence to know that you're going to get more right than you get wrong. And so the more transactions you make, the better you get. That's where it needs to get to. We'll talk about Vinnie Pasquantino's injury here in a moment. First, we want you to hear from our friends at David Starnes Allstate Insurance. David Starnes Allstate Insurance, serving the Kansas City area and all throughout the Midwest. With David Starnes Allstate, it's not just about fender benders. Beyond traditional safeguards, enjoy perks like roadside assistance for unexpected breakdowns, transportation expense coverage when your car is in the shop, auto replacement protection to keep you on the road in style, and much more. you can give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Visit them online or stop into any of their locations, including North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. Northland Injury Law, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, serving KC for more than 40 years, voted Kansas City's #1 accident lawyers, helping people with serious injuries from car accidents, work accidents, falls, and other personal injuries. Northland Injury Law doesn't get paid unless they get money for their client. Don't wait, get compensated now. If you have a case, text HURT to 22222. That's HURT to 22222, or call 816-400-HURT. That's 816-400-4878. The choice of a lawyer is an important one and should not be based solely upon advertisements. All right, let's talk a little bit about Vinnie Pasquantino's injury. How do they, let's assume he's going to be out for a little bit. How do they replace him? What do you think they do?
So who replaces them on the roster? So that, they just, at the same time that they sent Carlos Hernandez through waivers and lost him, they also sent Nick Prado and Nelly Velasquez through waivers, and they both cleared. And I probably shouldn't have been surprised. I'm a little bit surprised on Velasquez, but it's good that they keep them in the organization. But if you bring those guys up, you're going to have to send them through waivers again if you send them down in 2 weeks. So it's possible. I mean, Nick Prado is the most obvious sort of fit for left-handed hitting first, natural first baseman who's major league ready. But I don't expect that he will be brought up if it's a 1 or 2 weeks that Vinny's going to be out. I think it'll be a way for them to have both Nick Lofton and Kevin Biggio on the roster on opening day. And I could definitely see a scenario where Biggio is the starting first baseman, on opening day. Salvi can play there when Freddie Fermin is catching. We know that they're willing to do that. That's the other possibility. They may just go with Freddie Fermin starts 80% of the time behind the plate, and Salvi is your quasi starting first baseman, which again, for 10 days, that would probably be fine.
Sure.
But I think they could use Biggio, and then have Lofton as an extra bench bat. So I think they'll be fine. As long as it's a short-term thing, I don't think it'll be a huge deal.
Are they now short on left-handed, batters? I mean,
A
when
little
he
bit.
goes down, it doesn't look as good when they see a righty.
A little bit. And I believe me when I say I was so tempted to throw the commenters a bone here and just say that the obvious solution on opening day is just to start Jack Caglione. But I just couldn't bring myself to do that. I know that there will be people
Because you're a
that.
realist, right?
because I'm an old jaded man, Soren. I've been through too much to pin my hopes on a pipe dream. I think he'll be ready soon, but not on opening day. And again, I think it's just you don't want to make major decisions based on what should be hopefully a fairly short-term absence.
Okay, let's talk about the 26-man roster. We talked about the 13 pitchers. Andy Rogers reported that, and I it doesn't shock me. That's where I thought they were going with this. But the hitters, what are the 13 hitters now that you think are going to go with them?
So, we have our presumed, starting lineup, we're going with is, Jonathan India leading off, Bobby Witt, Pasquantino, if healthy, Salvador Perez, Michael Massey, and then Hunter Renfroe and MJ Melendez, Michael Garcia, Kyle Isbell. It's very similar, really, to the lineup we had last year with Jonathan India.
So who's the DH?
So that's the question. That's the funny thing here is I know the lineup. I actually don't know what positions everybody's going to be playing. If it were me, I'd probably DH MJ and then have India in left. But if they're not convinced that India can play left, then you can put him at third base. You could have Michael Garcia in left. But I just feel like if you're going to play Michael Garcia in center and third, I don't want to add a third position to his, him moving around the field. I don't want to turn him into a super utility guy just yet. Well,
His premium bat he always brings.
Well, I don't want to add more responsibilities to what I still think that he can hit eventually, and I don't want him to have to focus on learning. He's already learning one new position. Let's put it this way: he's just now learning center field. He's also never played left field. Like making him learn two new positions at the same time, at the same time that he's trying to play every day at the major league level, just seems like a lot. I would rather, India has played a lot of left field, and if he's not ready, then just DH him. Like India, I think is such an offensive boost for this team that even if he's at DH, I still think he's going to be quite valuable, and then just play MJ in left. But I mean, to me, the MJ Melendez defensive bar is low enough that even if India's still learning, I would rather take my lumps with India to start the year, thinking long term for the playoffs that like by the second half of the season, Jonathan India, if given a half season to play left field, will probably be a better left fielder at that point than MJ. So to me, the simple solution is just play India in left. If a month into the season it's just a disaster, okay, we can reevaluate. But for now, I would start him in left.
Okay. So basically they got the band back together, plus Jonathan India, right? That's the big addition. And then who else is on the bench in your mind?
So Fermin, like I said, the pinch runner role, whether it's Darwin Blanco or for a week or two, Tyler Tolbert, that's fine. But the pinch runner role, Mark Canha. And then to me, Kevin Biggio is you talk about the team is a little bit weak on the left side. Kevin Biggio is the rare, guy who can play up the middle, second base, and maybe even third, and is left-handed. So, and they brought him in for exactly this purpose, to be kind of the left-handed bench player. So I go with him.
Canha being acquired made Biggio a lock.
I think so, because Canha's right-handed, and you really, you don't want to have you would essentially have an all right-handed bench if you didn't go with Kevin Biggio. So yes, I think that probably they'd probably already made up their minds. It's more like that Biggio's performance convinced them that they could take on another right-handed bat and Mark Canha on the bench.
Okay, now Vinnie Pasquantino starts the year on the IR. Then who's the 13th?
Well, if he starts on the IR, then that means he's given up his he's gone off to pursue his dream of playing for the New York Jets. So I assumed him in the IL.
The IL, you know what I'm getting at. Come on, spare me the drama here.
I think it's Nick Lofton. I just think that Nick is. He's quietly had a good spring training, and his minor league performance, his batted ball metrics, they all point to a guy who can hit a little at the major league level. I know his numbers at the major league level last year were pretty terrible. I think like 189 with like no pop. Although, he hit 323 in 19 games in 2023. I just think that there is some offensive upside there. And I think he hit, who was he hitting? 393? Yeah, 394 in 43 plate appearances in spring training this year with a 535 OBP, I should point out. So, he's done nothing to lose a job. His skill set doesn't fit the bench as well as Biggio's does, but to me is the first man up.
Yeah, he doesn't win over Biggio, but to me, he is the guy to go with because of his flexibility, and he's earned it. And no one thinks he's going to have a 535 on base, right? But do I think the numbers are going to be good enough? Man, I hope so. I'd love to see him answer, some of the questions with some in-house guys that are controllable and cheap and not have to constantly be looking out there. It'd be nice. So I hope he gets the spot, and he needs to pretty soon, or they need to trade him, because otherwise, or he just literally has no value because he's aging out of where there's not much to see here if he doesn't get a shot pretty soon.
Right. He's 26 years old. Like he should be ready. He is about as good as he's ever going to be. So if you don't think he's good enough to be at the major league level, you need to either trade him to somebody who does, or just move on if nobody thinks he will.
Right. And so is that a playoff 26?
Well, we're going to get to our final predictions for record. Do you want to save that for later?
We'll save it. We'll save it.
The one thing
is it good enough? It doesn't mean you're going to predict him to, but is it good enough to make the playoffs?
The way I'll answer that is last year's offense, they finished sixth in the American League in runs scored. They obviously made the playoffs last year. Is this offense as good or better than last year's? I think it's as good. They're a year older. They didn't have a lot of change, right? And I'm always nervous when you bring back the same band, exactly the same band 1 year to the next, because in general, most players are closer to the decline phase of their career than the improvement phase of their career. The Royals had a bunch of guys though who were in the 24 to 26 range last year. Bobby Witt and Maikel Garcia were 24. Massey and Vinny were 26. MJ was 25. Even Kyle Isbell was 27. The only guys who are really on the down slope of the aging curve were Salvador Perez and Hunter Renfroe.
Right.
And the one addition they made is a guy whose skill set and Jonathan India just fits what they needed, both in terms of the OBP, in terms of where he'll bat in the lineup, etc., so well that I think that will counteract any regression we have. Bobby Witt not hitting quite as well as he did last year, etc. So I think it's about, they were sixth in the league last year. Some of that was because they hit unusually well with runners in scoring position. I don't think they were actually sixth best offense, so keep that in mind. But do I think they'll be around a league average in runs scored? Yeah. And with the pitching staff being the strength of the team from last year, I don't think that this offense will preclude them from making the playoffs.
All right, we are going to get to what our prediction is for the Royals with our bold and daring predictions and our record. Also take a quick look at the schedule. We'll do that next after you hear from our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty, Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. David Starnes Allstate Insurance. Elevate your coverage, elevate your confidence, and drive worry-free. Covering all the important things in your world. Home, business, life, and even the fun stuff, as well as your motorcycle, boat, ATV, and you name it. Get with Dave, and he'll get you covered. You can give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Visit them online or stop into any of their locations, North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave today. He'll give you peace of mind for the things in your life most important to you. David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. All right, let's get into it real quick on the schedule. I want to touch on that. It is not an easy schedule. They managed, I think they stumbled out of the gates, about 2-4, something like that, and then were able to pile up some wins and really gain confidence.
Yep.
And after that, then they kind of played 500-ish ball, right? So the question is, can they this year come out of the gates and build confidence? They open with Cleveland, Milwaukee, Baltimore, Minnesota, Cleveland, New York, Detroit. It's not until they play Colorado on April 22nd that you get to one of the lesser teams. It's 3 with them before it's 3 more with the Astros, then Tampa, then Baltimore again, then finally the White Sox. They get the White Sox for the first time on May 5th. That's there. Boston, Houston after that. It is a pretty rough schedule to get things going. Now, teams can play down from what the expectations are. They can play up from what the expectations are. Just taking a look at how that schedule starts. How concerned are you? I'm concerned that they could get off to a rough start. It could kill the confidence, and they never get their mojo back.
Yeah, I would put it this way. I'm glad that last year's team had last year's schedule and this year's team has this year's schedule and not the other way around. Because like you said, last year, getting off to a solid start, coming off 106 losses with the team nobody had any expectations for, I think was very important for them to have the confidence they could stay in the race all season long and pull off a historic improvement. This year's schedule, a lot harder. You take just the first 23 games up until that Rockies series. They play their 3 of the 4 teams in the AL Central. Like those games, you're going to play them. You might as well play them now. Those games are as difficult for the Guardians or the Twins or the Tigers as they are for the Royals, right? We feel like those 4 teams are very evenly matched. The only thing is you don't play the White Sox in that stretch, but you're going to get your 13 games in with the White Sox eventually. So I don't mind that, but it's the non-AL Central series. The Brewers, the Orioles, the Yankees, all 3 playoff contenders. I kind of don't mind playing the Yankees early because, they're kind of reeling with, the Garrett Cole loss and things like that. Like if they get off to a cold start, it might be a good time to beat them when they're down. But it's not an easy stretch, 23 games. If they come out of that 11-12, let's say, even 10-13, I would not be worried. I think this team knows it's good in the sense that, like, if they go 10-13, they're not going to panic and be like, oh, what's wrong with us? It's a tough stretch. And staying near 500 is really all you have to do until you get into the midpoint of the season. So the key is they just can't go 8-15. Right. Which we've seen so many Royals teams do in the past. I'd like to think the depth of starting pitching is such that they can avoid that. But it would help if the offense gets off to a hot start, that one or two guys, aside from Bobby Witt, really rake in April. Because that has been a lot of the issue in the past, is just guys not getting off the hot starts offensively. And the Royals, score, I don't know, 91 runs in all of April or something. And then, all the pitching in the world is not going to get you above 500 if you can't hit. So that would be my main concern.
If you missed the podcast last week, we went over kind of our player awards for the season. We predicted who would win what: player of the year, pitcher of the year, breakout player and pitcher of the year. Biggest disappointment, best player and pitcher, not named Bobby Witt Jr. and Cole Reagans. Best reliever, biggest impact rookie, top prospect at the end of the year, and then a key storyline for the season. If you missed it, you can catch it on the podcast. It's last week's Kaufman Corner, so go check it out. Now it's time for our bold and daring predictions. We make 5 bold and daring predictions for the season. They need to be bold and daring, hence the name Bold and Daring. There are some that I play this game with who don't understand what bold and daring is. The Royals will play at least 160 games. It's not bold, nor is it daring. Okay? So here we go. Do you want to do record first?
No, let's save that to the very end.
Save it to the very end. All right. Randy, do you want to lead off, or do you want me to?
I'll go ahead.
Okay. What do
I
you
just want to confirm. You want the predictions to be bold and daring? And daring, both.
At least bold or daring, but we prefer bold and daring.
Okay. You'll settle for one of the two. All right.
Okay.
All right. So mine are kind of ordered in, like, from least bold and daring to most bold and daring. Daring. So, so my first one, I'd like to always have one minor league one on here. So I'm going to go in a little bit of a different direction this year. In the past, I've talked about just a number of top prospects they've had. I'm just going to predict that some pitcher will emerge this year as a consensus top 100 prospect from the farm system, which may not sound like much, but it's been a while since a pitcher actually earned a spot on a top 100 prospect list that came for the Royals. It might have been Brady Singer, who was really the last one. That 2018 draft class where Singer and even Bubic and Lynch at times talked about, but that was like 2019, 6-7 years ago. And my rationale here is I'm not putting all my eggs in any one basket. I'm not saying it will be, Kuderna or Kuderna. I'm going to learn how to pronounce his name eventually. But the sheer number of pitchers that the Royals have drafted in the top 3 rounds or so over the last 4 years. You had Kuderna and Mazzucato, obviously, but you had Blake Walters and Hero Wyatt and Hunter Owen 2 years ago. You had David Shields and Drew Beam last year. And then obviously you still have Noah Cameron and Steven Zobak, who I don't think will be there, only because if they're that good, they'll probably finish the season in the major leagues. But to me, this is really a bet on the Royals pitching development process, because we saw what Brian Sweeney and Zach Bove could do at the major league level, turning one of the worst pitching staffs in AL history in 2 years into last year. The Royals had their best starting rotation in 39 years. They started that overhaul at the major league level, but it was only they hired Sweeney and Bove right after JJ got the top job. It was another year or so before they really started to fill out the minor league ranks with new pitching development people. And I'm hoping that this year we will see that manifest. Someone, maybe more, but at least one person, probably from that list, but maybe someone completely off the radar. Felix Arande, who's a Cuban they signed, who's made steady progress. There are some guys. Someone's going to emerge and be a top 100 pitching prospect this year. I think that would be a good feather in the cap for their development process.
Okay. I will go with Chris Bubic as a top 2 starter for the Royals this year. I think, you take your pick. I said top 2 because that gives me some wiggle room that if somebody else goes down, I can make the argument. But I really do think Chris Bubic is going to be, like Playoff time, he'll be one of your guys, right? If this team makes the playoffs, Chris Bubich will be asked to take the baseball in one of the 3 games. And just to be bold and daring, I'm making him a top 2 starter, not just a top 3. I feel very comfortable that he's gonna. Yeah, I just know that the reality is that either somebody's going to get hurt or somebody's going to regress from the top 3. So that makes that pretty easy to say that there's just some math that's on your side. Although Chris Bubich staying healthy, there's not math on your side necessarily because he's never done it at the big league level. But so to be bold and daring, I'm going to push him up into being a top 2 starter for the Kansas City Royals. And I'm not done with Chris Bubich, by the way. Just FYI.
Okay.
Peek under the covers about what's coming, Rany.
Very good. I don't disagree with any. I mean, if you said top 3, I would have said that's neither bold nor daring. My only worry about top 2, I kind of don't want him to be top 2 because that makes me a little nervous that something Cole Reagans or Seth Lugo, missed time or regressed more than expected. But Bubich absolutely has that ability, so I'm fully on board with that.
Okay, number 2 for you.
So number 2 for me, this one I think is you're not going to agree with. That's why it's bold and daring. But the guy, sometimes you have to have a guy that no one expects to take a step forward. I think Maikel Garcia is going to take a significant step forward. We'll say he has at least an OPS plus of over 90, which would put him significantly better than even when he was a rookie. And he will be playing every day. I was going to say he's going to be
an OPS plus of over 90, so he's not even a league average player.
I think if he has an OPS of 90 with his defense, I think that he'll be a valuable player in the sense of, I would say, let's put it this way. I think he'll be a 3-win player, which is a very good player, except I'm not certain he'll be playing every day at the beginning of the season. I think, though, he will be an everyday player for this team in the second half and be above average player overall when you factor in his defense, his speed, as well as his hitting, because he was an elite base runner last year. I just feel like we're kind of sleeping on him. He's only 25. He's 3 months older than Bobby Witt. He's only 25 years old. I feel like there is still room for him to take that step forward. We kind of expected it last year because, his batted ball metrics as a rookie were better than the numbers suggested. He didn't, but he's still top 10% in the major leagues in terms of both chase rate and contact rate, meaning he swings at fewer pitches outside the strike zone than almost everybody. And when he swings, he makes contact at a higher rate than almost everybody. So on some level, I refuse to believe that a guy who can do that at his age is not capable of having some thump in the bat, of actually doing something offensively.
So last year I said Maikel Garcia racks up 10 plus homers, 35 plus doubles, and a 340 on base percentage. That was bold and daring. Okay. You have got him to be less than a league average hitter, and somehow that is bold and daring in your mind.
It's semi-bold and semi-daring, but I just feel like he's sort of the forgotten man in this lineup. And I want to give him some flowers, and I'm expecting things from him this year. If it doesn't happen this year, then maybe we have to move on. But I actually think in some way, if you told me right now, if there's one player I could request to find out at the end of the year took a big step forward, it'd probably be him. Because if he has a good year, I feel really good about the Royals' chances of making the playoffs.
Okay. All right. My second one, Jonathan India will have the 28th season in Royals history with 100 runs scored, and will be the 8th player in Royals history with 110 runs scored. I'm counting on the offense being legit, counting on India being up top. I'm quantifying it. 100 runs. They've only had 27 guys score 100 runs. Is that kind of pathetic?
I'm just going to say I hate you, Soren, and you'll see why very soon.
Okay. So no, I'll hear your thoughts on that when you make the same bold and daring prediction.
Mine might even be more bold and more. You just accused me of not being bold or daring. I'm actually going to call and I'm going to raise you.
Okay, fire that out right now.
All right. Well, it's second from the top on my list, but number 4. I'm not going out of turn here, but I have Jonathan India becomes the 5th Royal in history to score 115 runs. Only
Oh, okay.
4 guys have scored 115 runs in Royals history. Bobby Witt obviously did it last year. He was the 4th. Johnny Damon in the year 2000 scored 136. Willie Wilson in 1980 scored 133. They led the league, those two. And then George Brett in 1979, when he actually played every day, unlike 1980 when he missed 45 games, scored 119. Only 4 guys have scored 115 runs. Obviously, this is the one you and I
Wait a minute,
are.
Damon, Willie, Brett, and who was the other one?
Bobby Witt.
And Bobby Witt, yeah.
Right. Bobby Witt scored 125. I should put that out there. And actually, I mean, I thought about saying that both Bobby and India will do it and have the Royals will have 2 guys score 115 runs. Frankly, if India does it, there's a very good chance Bobby will too.
For sure.
Because it requires for India to do it, requires Bobby batting right behind him to have another monster year. If Vinnie hadn't strained his hamstring already, there might be a ridiculous RBI total in store for him as well. I mean, he almost got to 100 last year with no leadoff hitter and missing a month. Right.
Yeah.
So, but just a little uncertainty there with his hammies. So, but look, this is the one you and I clearly we didn't talk about this. We absolutely arrived not just on India specifically, but on the specific statistic. I feel like we've been taking him for granted a little bit in the sense of what he is. But we haven't talked about him all spring training, but obviously he's the new guy. He's had a really good spring training. If you read between the lines of some of his comments to the media, it sounds to me like he's quite happy to have left Cincinnati. He did not feel appreciated there, that he felt like his name was always in trade rumors. There doesn't seem to be any regrets about the fact that he got moved on and that he's with an organization that actually wants him now. And he fits what the Royals need so much. He's going to be playing hopefully every day, batting directly in front of maybe the best player in baseball. And then a couple of quote unquote RBI guys in Vinny and Salvi. Like, he understands his role, get on base, and you will find a way home. So I think we both expect big run score numbers here. Whether it's 100, 110, 115, I think he's going to have a really big year for the Royals.
Okay. We'll take it. I will definitely take it. So yes, you one up me. I think you probably just redid that while I was putting mine out there.
On the fly. I'm sitting there just crossing out one of my bold and daring prediction here. Cole Reagan starts opening day. No, I crossed that one out. I'm going with Jonathan India.
I'm having a sneezing fit here, so I'm bouncing back and forth between mute and not mute. If you're catching the podcast, you can't see it. If you're watching us here on the stream, which you can always be a part of Sunday nights at 9, you know that I'm going through a sneezing fit right here. All right, my next one. Kris Bubic sets the Royals walks per 9 record. He best Doug Bird's 1.411 in 1982, which is currently the record. Kris Bubic is a control freak, the likes no one in a Royals organization has ever seen before. This one I'm reaching a little bit. I think it'll be pretty tough to get there, but I just wanted to highlight the fact that I think he's going to be I think he's going to carry forward really impressive strikeout to walk, the walks per inning ratio, and I think he's going to flirt around with it. I think, you know, there'll be some times where we're like, ooh, could he do it? This is what he needs to do. So I'm gonna pick him to set a new record in the walks per 9, beating Doug Bird's 1.411.
I like it. That's a good one. Like I had the Cole Reagan's strikeouts last year. If I'd gone with the
that was in my head, I was like,
right.
Okay, Randy came up with one of these things. I'm gonna come up with one of these things.
Right. If I'd gone with the strikeouts per 9, I would have had it. So walks per 9. I mean, look, he was phenomenal last year. 2 walks in 30 innings. And 2 walks in 16 innings the year before he blew out his elbow. So he didn't have nearly that kind of command before, but he was always a command, quote unquote, command pitcher, guy who, you know, didn't have the greatest stuff, but knew how to use it. And then the stuff ticked up after the Royals worked with him. So 1.4 it's a tough ask, right? It's not that I don't think he can do it. It's a high standard. The best control season in Royals history is a tough standard, but I could definitely see him being 1.7, 1.8. So this will be a fun one to watch.
I'm looking for the list here. Hold on, because somebody said walks. Where is it? Here. No, that's career. Damn it. I need single season. Because somebody said Brett Saberhagen. Ever heard of him? Yeah, I have heard of him. If that was sent to me, but he doesn't have the record. He's second and third in Royals history at 1.453 and 1.475.
Yeah, he was always good.
Yeah, 10-1 goes Dennis Leonard, Larry Gura, Mark Ubiza, James Shields, Dick Drago, Roger Nelson, Paul Bird, Brett Saberhagen, Doug Bird. Doug Bird is actually top of the list. So, and I do like in XQ Diamond says he was the one who put it up there. Bubic, more wins than walks, something that Brett Saberhagen did as a member of the Mets, but not with the Royals.
Well, given that teams, don't care about wins for for individual pitchers, and that you need 5 innings, and Bubic is coming back from Tommy John, like he could have a great year and win like 8 games. So yes. I don't think he's going to have more wins than walks. Yes. But could he have the greatest control season in Royals history? These are bold and daring, like you said. So
that's right.
Why not?
Bold and daring, not lobbing softballs here. All right, what's number 4 for you?
So 4 for me, which was third on my list, the Royals bullpen we'll use ERA as a standard. Will be a top 10 bullpen in the major leagues this year. And last year, looking up the exact numbers, they had I think a 4.13 ERA as an organization.
Where did they finish?
They were 10th in the American League. I'm looking up the major league numbers as a whole. The major league average was 397. They were below average. So they were around 20th or so. Here we got it. 20th exactly, with a 4.13 ERA. I think they will be top 10 this year. I mean, when you think about how bad the bullpen was to start the season, and James MacArthur was their closer for a good chunk of the season and was deserving of the closer role for much of the season. And then you think about how that they're actually finishing 20th is a testament to how good they were down the stretch, and I think they will maintain a lot of that this year. But I also think that and this is where you and I have disagreed, but I think Estevez is going to be good, and I think his presence in the closer's role is not going to inhibit Lucas Erceg from being good. And I also think that it's very easy to sleep on Hunter Harvey, because he was such a disappointment after they got him in the trade last year. Obviously, his back was a problem, and was probably a problem from the time they got him. His back has not been a problem this spring. He has pitched well in this spring, and he has a track record of success. So I think that could be as good a top 3 as the Royals have had in their bullpen in since maybe not 2015, but 2016, 2017. Until Wade Davis and Kelvin Herrera moved on. But on top of that, I mean, Daniel Lynch is in the bullpen. I think Daniel Lynch is really good. Yeah. I think Angel Serpa, I think they've kind of figured out what Angel Serpa can do. The way he was used in the playoffs last year, coming in like big jams. I think he has the confidence now that, even if he's kind of a left-handed weapon and kind of a specialist, but he could be really useful in that role. And I think that, if Chris Stratton doesn't succeed, Steven Cruz can come up. Steven Zobak could be moved to the bullpen if they don't have a need in the rotation. I just feel like the combination of top end talent and depth for the bottom of the bullpen, I think is a really good. The Royals are in a good spot, and I think that this is going to be an above average, not barely, but a comfortably above average. We'll call it top 10 bullpen in the major leagues.
Okay. Number 4 for me, Matt Quatraro wins Manager of the Year. He put his name into the mix last year. If the Royals have the kind of year that I think a lot of people think they will have, then I think he basically wins a multi-year, this guy probably kind of could have won it last year, maybe deserved it last year. Now he's having another great year. It's his turn to win it. I give Matt Quatraro the Manager of the Year this year, because if nobody was, and we spent some time, and I even brought the guys from Fangraphs on to my radio show and talked to them, which I'm a huge fan of their work and everything. But just all the tones of the Royals off season was that they kind of got lucky last year and they really didn't do that much this year and they should have done more. And okay, well, if that's your tone coming in and the Royals are back in the playoffs, then the manager had something to do with it. And Matt Quatraro, they will be forced to give him the Manager of the Year award this year.
The only reason I would say it's a difficult ask is to just if some other
That's what
team.
makes it bold
I agree,
and daring.
and it is bold and daring. But to me, it may be decided by factors beyond the Royals' control, in the sense of if some team in the American League has an out of expectation, if the Athletics in Sacramento somehow like win 85 games, like Mark Canha might win, just
Right.
is the way the voting works. So you have to avoid that scenario. But if so, and the Royals have another good year, I think we both know where this is going in terms of predictions for the Royals' overall record. Absolutely, Matt Quatraro, people will look and say, you know what, maybe we should have given it to him last year. That the Royals winning 86 games might have been more impressive than the Guardians winning 93, when the Guardians, top to bottom, the whole organization has proven itself to be savvy over the last decade, whereas the Royals before Matt Quatraro got there seemed adrift, and now they're not. So yeah, I think it's a good pick, but it may come down to what other teams do as much as what they do.
Okay, your final pick?
My final, where this is going. My final, this is the most bold and most daring prediction, that Jack Caglione will be in the lineup for the Royals' first postseason game. I think it says it all. I think the Royals will be in the playoffs, and I think Jack Caglione will be in the starting lineup, whether it's at DH
in 2025.
Right, in 2020. These are bold and daring predictions for the 2025
2 years
season.
now, they go back to the playoffs, and he's in his third year. Like,
I will not say I told you. No.
Okay.
This year, whatever it is, September 30th or October 1st, whatever the first playoff game is, unless they get the bye in the first round. I don't think that will happen, but you never know. I think Jack Caglione will be in the lineup. I'm basing this on, incredibly small sample sizes, elite exit velocities, glowing scouting reports. Even Keith Law, who saw him this week, had some very nice things to say, not just about his power, but about his plate discipline, which I think was probably more of a surprise given what he looked like when he was drafted. Immense power. We knew plate discipline was not on the menu back then, and he worked the walk, and so my point is, this is a bet on not only that he's an elite talent, but that these guys coming out of college today are more prepared for major league velocity, for major league ability than even 10, 15 years ago. These guys he's been seeing elite competition, fastballs in the mid 90s for, 3-4 years now. He might be ready very, very quickly. And by quickly, I mean by August. And if he is, I think in the Royals are in a pennant race, they're not going to hesitate to bring him up and figure out a way to get him in the lineup, whether it means moving him to right field or putting him at DH or I don't know where, but he'll be in the lineup. That's my most bold and most daring prediction for 2025.
Okay. And I didn't have any ranking where I was like building to a crescendo, but number 5 for me is that Bobby Witt Jr. wins the MVP. And I know when he finished second, you'd be like, well, how bold and daring is that? Picking anybody to win the MVP is bold and daring because it's hard. You have to stay healthy, number one. Then you have to best your opponents. I expect Aaron Judge to regress, start getting old, and or get hurt. Juan Soto is not there. And I think this is a testament to just how legit I think Bobby Witt Jr. is. I mean, I think, the bat speed, the hand speed, the foot speed, all of it is just elite. And so I think while he is in the prime of his athletic career, there is nothing that's going to stop him short of injuries. And I think he laid the groundwork. If he has the exact same season he had last year or close to it, I think that will get him the MVP award. I don't see who stops him. I guess maybe somehow a healthy Mike Trout, could do it, but I don't think he'll be healthy. So this is now Bobby Witt Jr. goes in, was one of the favorites every year. I'll say that he gets it done this year and is the MVP.
I mean, on the one hand, is it bold and daring, Bobby Witt MVP? I know what you're saying. It doesn't sound bold and daring, but frame it another way. You're predicting that he, after finishing second in the league in the vote last year,
after having a career season, he'll have a career season.
Right. Like how I'm trying to find how many active players
Trout
have finished second or first, like in back-to-back seasons. To do it 2 years in a row. Trout almost certainly has done it because I think
he's definitely done it.
Shohei Ohtani,
like 4 or 5 years.
Right. Shohei Ohtani, won back-to-back MVPs and just the last 2 years in different leagues, but Shohei Ohtani's a unicorn. Fine. Mike Trout has done it. Aaron Judge did not. He won 2 MVPs in 3 years, but in between, I think he finished 12th. I was looking, Mookie Betts has not done it. I don't think Bryce Harper has done it.
No chance. Bryce Harper's done it.
The point is, these guys have had, MVP seasons, but to do it 2 years in a row is not easy. And like you said, if you're going to predict anybody to do it after finishing second to be better, pick the guy who's still 24 for 3 more months. Like, it's the age, the age and the durability, right? He's 24 and he's never suffered, never been on the injured list. Thank God, he got hit by a pitch, didn't break anything. He's back in the lineup, hit a home run. Like, that's the guy to bet on. It's like a young Trout, like a young Mookie Betts. Like, he's going to be an MVP candidate every single season. If he finishes third this year, like, that's still a back-to-back top 3 finishes are very rare. So it is bold and daring. And at the same time, it feels, as a Royals fan, I don't want to say preordained, but it feels almost like par for the course. Maybe we're spoiled because we're also Patrick Mahomes fans, but like the idea of a guy just being the absolute best year after year after year doesn't sound like a big deal, but it absolutely is. And it should feel like something unique and something to savor.
For the record, Mike Trout went second, first, then fourth, second, first. By the way, then fifth. But he did it 5 years in a row. First
5 and 7 out of 8.
7 out of 8.
That's Mahomes-ish, right? Like, yes. Right there. But postseason success not quite the same. So that's why baseball is a different sport.
That's why it's a different sport.
Right.
Sure.
But Bobby Witt, I mean, I look, you don't expect that. But could he be a top 5 finisher 5 years in a row, 6 years in a row? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, there are just guys who, Willie Mays every year was just one of the, 2 or 3 best players in the sport. And so much of it is, can you stay healthy for 150 plus games, right? Like, that's a big part of it. When you look at the guys who didn't do it, who are immensely talented, but didn't do it every single year. I mean, Ronald Acuna won an MVP, but like, in between, he's blown out like both knees now. Like, you've got to stay in the lineup in order to do it. And Bobby Witt has proven he can do that.
By the way, Cotman said Trout, Ohtani, Cabrera, Harper. Bryce Harper has not even finished top 30 back-to-back.
Right.
I mean, Bryce Harper finished 30th, not in the top 30, not in the top 30, first, not in the top 30, 12th, not in the top 30, not in the top 30, not in the top 30, first, not in the top 30. I mean, so that's the point about, and I'm not saying that to run down Cotman, putting him up there, and he wants me to check Goldschmidt too.
Goldschmidt, I got Goldschmidt here. Goldschmidt from 2013 on went second, didn't place, then second again, then 11th, then third. Okay. So he did very well, but again, back to back is not common.
Yeah, we just want to be clear how difficult it is. Yes. Mike Trout made it look easy. It's not.
Right.
That's the bottom line. All right, your record.
My record. Okay, I'll go first here. So on paper, doing my analysis, I had the Royals at 83 and 79.
Okay.
But I felt like the Royals, that's an average, outcome of all the possible outcomes that can happen. But I don't think the Royals will finish 83 and 79, because if they're on pace to finish 83 and 79, either they're going to go for it and add talent at the deadline, or they're going to sell, right? Like, whatever their situation is. And I feel like if they're at or slightly above 500, they're going to go for it. JJ's shown that willingness to do so. I think they'll be a better team in the second half. Like I said, I think they could bring in Jack Caglione, and that could be a big shot in the arm. So I'm going bold here. I'm saying 88 and 74. Better than last year. I see the smile on your face. Oh, boy. And a playoff spot. Obviously, I've tipped my hand on that one. All right, friend. Now is the point you tell me you predicted 88 and 74.
88 and 74. I mean, this is what we're always real close to it. And I have the same kind of feeling. Like, I do believe that they're better. And so you can be like, well, why aren't you giving them more games? Because I think that they are due for a market correction, but I think they correct back towards the 80 to 82 range, but then I think they did make the team better. So that pushes them back up. I think they're deeper. I think there is answers, as you mentioned, in the bullpen and with the pitching staff, so that they can handle a little bit of the injuries. And I like where the organization's going. I think John Sherman has proven that he'll give them some money to go try to win some games. I think the stadium the stadium situation is still out there. And so I think it's important for this club to continue to contend. So I think they put something into it. So yeah, I go 88-74. And now I wish I'd gone 89.
I'm actually glad we're both at 88 because no matter what happens, you can't make fun of whatever I did said because you said the exact same damn thing.
Like last year when you were a complete coward.
Yeah, two games less than you, and you lorded that over me all season. No, this year we're in this together, buddy.
Yeah,
come hell or high water.
88-74. There's an 88-74 in the chat room. Terry's got 88-74 as well. Go ahead and make your predictions now. Do it now before the season's begun. Yeah, I don't care what your prediction is. If, in April you're taking a shot at it. You got to do it now. Now is what makes it official. We're officially on the record at 88-74. And would you take that right now? Would you bank that?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean,
does that make the playoffs?
Probably.
Yeah.
But if not, it certainly means they will be playing meaningful baseball up until the last week of the season, probably the last weekend of the season.
Right.
And if they miss, well, at least you had. At least the season mattered, and there will be moments that mattered and moments that we will remember for years to come.
Tyler says 85 wins. Cotman says he's sticking with 92 wins. Alex says they've underachieved based upon their Pythagorean number. He could see 92 wins if things even out a little bit this year. So there's some optimism out there in Mudville. So there it is. We appreciate the fact that everybody goes into this year thinking the Royals have got something going on. If you need something going on when it comes to your insurance, David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. I've been talking with Dave and his team. They're absolutely fantastic. You can give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Gann Asphalt and Concrete's been serving Kansas City for more than 30 years. They keep your parking lot safer, help you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. One contractor, all things parking lot. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. And our friends at Northland Injury Law. If you have a case, text HURT to 22222. That's HURT, H-U-R-T, to 22222, or call 816-400-HURT. For more than 40 years, Northland Injury Law has been serving Kansas City. Google 5-star rated. It's Northland Injury Law. For the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Kaufman Corner Podcast.